Hi, this is the first of a few conversations I'm going to have about what it's like to try to integrate um, a, a broken tradition or a tradition that doesn't have elders, like the traditions that some of our European ancestors have, which are broken, but they still exist, into a foreign country that my ancestors moved to as settlers, and while at the same time trying to have respect for the land that you're living on and the traditions that you're a part of. So it's kind of a mouthful. A lot of this goes under the heading of cultural appropriation, but I think it's a little more complex than that. I think it's really about marrying two groups of people or two traditions together, and that's always a very complex idea. So in animism, the idea is that we're all related, but we're not all related closely. So there are relatives, like one Amazon hunter called it relatives by marriage and the relatives. So relatives by marriage are situations where they're not as close to me as other things are. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this through plants. So there was sort of a crisis that maybe about a year ago, some elders started communicating with the beauty industry and with New Age practitioners and with shamanic teachers and with herbalists that the herb white sage was threatened. And this is partially a problem with overharvesting due to demands for profit from companies and environmental degradation. So this is threatening this herb. And it's a very sacred and important medicine for traditional people in North America. So they were asking people not to use it unless they either grew it themselves or bought it from someone who grows it themselves. And so basically they were saying, if you don't fulfill those two things, could you please just work with another plant? This is an important idea because as climate change becomes more disruptive, this could happen to other plants. And we need to have a way to relate to this and work with this. So there are also messages around the same time that people who are not indigenous just shouldn't work with the plant at all. I personally found those messages to be confusing because they take away the idea that a person who isn't indigenous can't have a relationship with a plant. And I find that to be really problematic for reasons that I'm not going to get into with this talk. So I instead listened to the first elders who said, don't use white sage unless you're going to grow it yourself or buy it from someone that you know has grown it themselves in a good way. So this forced me to look at my relationship with white sage. How important was it to me? How close a relative was it? And I realized that I wasn't as close to white sage as I am to other plants. I work more with juniper and mugwort and another plant, Palo Santo, that I'll talk about a little later. So for me, it was relatively easy to say I'm not going to work with white sage anymore. But there were people that I was close to that did have a close relationship with white sage. And because of them, I started to look for people who might sell white sage as seeds. And United Plant Savers, who does a lot of this work, actually sells seeds if you want to try to grow your own. So for those people, they then had to decide what their relationship to white sage is. Do I care about it enough to want to grow it myself, or to buy it from someone that would grow it themselves? So now to kind of go on to another facet of this, which is traditions where you've been initiated by a group of elders, whether they're broken, folk traditions in the European traditions, or whether they are indigenous traditions to other cultures. And there are certain plants that are used in those traditions because they bring you a little closer to the spirits. And maybe you might even have a personal rapport with these plants. So for me, two of those are juniper which actually grows in my area. And you can't see this because it's burned, but it's a wood that grows in the Andes. It's from a tree, and it's called Palo Santo. And it's an important part of the ceremonies in those traditions. So for myself, I use a very small amount of Palo Santo. It's a blessing herb. I don't use it as an essential oil or as an incense because that takes more of the herb. I only use the sticks. I probably go through one package in a year. My entire family uses it, and we only use it in rituals that have to do with the tradition that we were blessed to be part of. But it also comes from very far away, so you have to worry about shipping, because there are ways of buying Palo Santo where you can buy it from people who are trying to gather it in a good way, in a respectful way. I also work with juniper. Juniper is a plant that, as I said, grows in my area. If I had to, I could forage it myself, but I don't, because I don't have permission to go on to areas where I can forage it, and I'm trying to be respectful of the wild places in my landscape. It is bioregional in the sense that you can grow it in this environment where I live. It's connected to two traditions, one that has to do with ancestors of mine and another that has to do with a tradition that I was blessed to be part of. And when I do buy it, I can buy it from somebody who ships it from like an hour away from where I live. So it's not using a lot of fossil fuels to get it. So if I had to grow one myself, I'd probably grow mugwort, because I'd probably have the best chance of growing that, or find a way to cultivate juniper, because those things at least I'd have the chance of growing. It would be almost impossible for me to grow Palo Santo, even though it's part of a tradition that, like some of the sticks of Palo Santo that I have used over the years were given to me by indigenous teachers in that tradition. So this is kind of a long-winded ramble about relationships, but it's a way of looking at the way I use sacred smoke and what is my relationship to a tradition. Is it a tradition that my ancestors held, or that elders are passing down from their ancestors? Is it something that I can get without using a lot of it if it's from far away, because that also is hard on the earth? Is it something that I have permission to use by the teachers? And is it something that I could grow myself if I needed to? So those are all considerations that many of us have to think about when we think about working with plants, not just cultural appropriation, but actually being in relationship with our own ancestors, the ancestors of the traditions that we follow, that we're blessed to be part of. And the fact that in some of those traditions, the best way to connect with the spirits in those traditions is to use the traditional plants. And also to worry about how do I do this in such a way that it doesn't harm the earth that I'm trying to honor. So I hope this is helpful. I'm going to talk next time about core shamanism and traditions and ancestral traditions. But for now, I hope that this at least gets you started about thinking about your own relationship to these plants and how you feel about ethically using them and what your ethics are around them. Because I don't think it's easy, and I don't think that just saying I'm using the plants that I have permission by my elders to use really goes into all the ramifications. So it'd be interesting to hear what you think. Thank you.